That's right, Ayer. Don't f*** it up. Although, I think we all know that the odds are definitely in his favor that he will. And if I know it, and you know it, why the heck doesn't the WB know it? And at least Jeff Johns, you would think, would realize it. But methinks Jeff Johns is outvoted on a number of occasions based on the way the DCEU is continuing despite his coming on board. Now, there are a couple of good things going on here, right? So let me walk you through it. And as always, there are chapter times in the video description down below. But I want to start by saying that I think that going from some ridiculous, birds of prey mashup with both female villains and heroes to just a Gotham City Sirens film focusing on female villains, based on the comic, and also I think, a lot of, fun animated shorts from the Bruce Timm Paul Dini days is a much, much better decision. I mean, it's just really strong branding. It's very clear what it is, whereas the other thing was just like barf, just regurgitating like, we don't know what we're doing. This is more deceptive. We don't know what we're doing. Okay, so when the story first broke yesterday, I was racing to get my Rogue One spoiler coverage up. So a bunch of you tweeted me the article at The Hollywood Reporter, and I scanned it really quickly, and I saw the word producer, and I was like, oh, I think that's great that David Ayer is going to produce Gotham City Sirens. I don't know why you guys are freaking out or asking me if this is a good idea. Well, I thought, well, maybe I can see why someone wouldn't be sure whether or not it was a good idea if he was just a producer, right? Because I do think they had great character design for Suicide Squad. I think David Ayer helped or was the guiding force on a project that created stuff that was quite potent commercially and that fans had a lot of interest in, right? So I was like, yeah, of course we want to keep him on as a producer. But then so many of you were asking me, I was like, I better double check this article. And I think even a couple of you had started to mention director, and I was like, what? So I looked closer at the article, and I saw it snuck in there, producer and director, and I was like, oh my God. I wrote in my notes, why movie God, why, right? It's just so ridiculous. I just don't quite know what to, it's silly. But we're going to talk about where Warner Brothers and Margot Robbie are coming from in just a minute. But I will say, before I say negative things, that I will 100% see this movie because I'm such a big fan of all the characters involved. I had artwork of Poison Ivy up in my bedroom growing up. I thought she was such a cool character. And I think that there will always be a core fan base. But the thing is that you have to look at comic book sales and, animation ratings versus the $745 million that Suicide Squad made in theaters. You just can't keep testing the audience this way. Look at what's happening to the depreciating box office for Fantastic Beasts. Rogue One's looking a little scary. The lack of interest is starting to become visible. So, I think, and look at how Moana didn't quite work out. And I think that Disney had hoped that would be another Frozen. So, the audience isn't so easily manipulated, Hollywood, or at least, because that's the way I think Hollywood used to operate. That they're like, oh, we punch the buttons on the machine and then, out comes the expected outcome. And that's not the case anymore. I think particularly because of the competition for content. There's just so many other places to be entertained these days. And people have a limited amount of money to spend, so they've become much more picky. Just look at, I think, at the not so strong sales for the Suicide Squad extended cut. I mean, look at that. It's already depreciated the audience for this very set of characters. I saw them advertising that for the physical copy coming out just a few days ago. And also no one talked about it. There was a lot more discussion about the Ultimate Edition with Batman v Superman than the Suicide Squad extended cut, which is totally Warner Brothers' fault because they didn't include the extra Joker footage everybody asked for. And people were like, I didn't ask for this, and I'm not going to pay for it. And that's exactly what happened. Although I would be we'll talk about Ayer's Poison Ivy and Catwoman in a moment. We have to stick to the outline. All right, so yes, Suicide Squad made $745 million worldwide. So I can understand Warner Brothers being like, sure, you could make another one, right? I also think that Warner Brothers, as we've discussed before, is like the only studio to have mob-level loyalty to their peeps, right? They're the closest any studio today has to a studio system where they have people working for them and they will continue to hire them even when everybody else in the entire face of the earth is screaming at them not to. Case in point, Zack Snyder, right? I liked what Zack Snyder did on Batman v Superman, but clearly he's just not working. But Warner Brothers they're like, I care more about you, Zack Snyder, than I do my bottom line. And in some ways, I guess that's kind of touching, but this also, Warner Brothers has shareholders. All right, so anyway, as for Margot Robbie, David Ayer made her an A-lister, so I'm sure she feels in some ways that she owes him. And I'm sure David Ayer was like, you know what, this sounds like a pretty successful movie, Gotham City Sirens. I'd like to come on board and direct and produce. And what's she going to say? No, considering he made her a superstar? I think she's kind of stuck. Because I don't think it's totally solidified. I think she's like, she could fall off if she doesn't have good follow-up projects. So she's like, and also if Warner Brothers is like, we want him too. I mean, I think she's also to some degree just stuck. And I also think that Warner Brothers and Margot Robbie are not comic book readers, so I don't think they're confident in their ability to guide the material. Again, they do have Jeff Johns sitting right there, but Jeff Johns doesn't have a lot of Harley Quinn experience himself. And DC, speaking of DC, the comic book division is doing something with the character right now that's going to come up in just a minute. All right, so anyway. I think that while I understand where Warner Brothers and Margot Robbie are coming from, I really wish that they would try and understand where the rest of us are coming from, right? Because I don't think that David Ayer can get it right. Like, a lot of people said, oh, he only had 6 weeks to write that screenplay. Cut him some slack. Well, you know what? I think in 6 weeks he could have realized the movie didn't have any action, right? I think in 6 weeks he could have, written a little bit of a better movie, to be perfectly honest with you, right? And also, even when he was shooting the movie, I think there's no inspired direction in Suicide Squad. It's just really standard stuff, right? It's like, I think the most interesting and innovative thing about Suicide Squad is the character design. And then the execution of it was what was so poor. So I would take David Ayer out of execution and just keep him on character design. I'd be like, this is where you really shine, Ayer. Take the producing credit and go make other movies. I'll even let you make them for Warner Brothers, and I'll give you a small but manageable budget. Okay, so I would like to see someone else direct. At least someone else is writing, but I don't think that we should feel that we're, safe at home quite yet, because it's a woman, again, Geneva Robertson Dorett. And she is, quote unquote, I love this, I love how they spin this stuff in Hollywood. She's a top female writer in the action sphere. Really? A top female writer? Maybe one of the only female writers, but, she's just written the new Tomb Raider, Sherlock Holmes 3, 2 movies that haven't been released yet. And then also, she's part of the Transformers Brain Trust, but she's not working on Last Night. And she doesn't have anything in the pipeline that we know about. And also for women, just because you have a woman writing the movie doesn't mean it's going to be great. I have read so many bad comics written by women where they too are trying to have diversity hires. And they're like, well, we need, it's the usual thing that you see happening in movies now. It happened in comics before. Oh, there aren't enough people of color writing comics. There aren't enough women writing comics, etc., etc. Then they go and find them, and I'd say that like 90% of the time they do an awful job because they're diversity hires. They're token hires. They're not... I think they'd be better off minding the people who actually, of different ethnicities and genders who read the comics and giving them a shot and honing their skills and bringing them up the ranks than going and trying to find, going off on a tangent to find other talent that just can't work in the medium. And also, I have to say it, David Ayer has a horrible view of women. I think that his view of women is worse than Zack Snyder's. And Zack Snyder, I liked what he did with Wonder Woman. I think Gal Gadot, well, it was a rare situation for him because look what he did to the Silk Spectre and Watchmen. It was just a travesty. His Sucker Punch movie, I mean, I really don't want Gotham City Sirens to turn out like Sucker Punch. I mean, that's horrifying, that idea. But I think not unbelievable. But I think that Ayer is even worse. I think he's extremely misogynistic. I want to be clear. I don't think he's misogynistic like in an evil, horrible way, right? I think he's just, I don't know how he came about that way, but I think that David Ayer only views women as hookers, girlfriends, objects, not their own people, and they're certainly not at the level of their male counterparts. It's just, why am I saying this? Watch any David Ayer movie ever made. Also, I really like that he made a number of the characters in Suicide Squad. He changed it from like a mob kind of influence to a gang influence. I thought that was really clever. I don't want to see him do that to everybody. I don't want the gang version of Poison Ivy and Catwoman, right? Because there are different types of criminals. Criminals change But even today, it's not, just like it wasn't always the mob, it's not always gangs today. And so I don't want to see every single Batman Rogues Gallery character exactly the same. I want to see the variety of criminals reflected in the Batman Rogues Gallery. And speaking of Batman, he's surely going to cameo in a movie called Gotham City Sirens, right? Look how much it helped Suicide Squad that he showed up for just a few scenes. But on that note, I don't think Jared Leto is going to come back for two reasons. One, I think he lost interest in the whole thing after he was pretty much cut out of Suicide Squad. I also think, as the Hollywood Reporter, they wrote a whole op-ed piece on this, and I didn't like it at all. But they said, one of the big criticisms of Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad is that she was the Joker's girlfriend. And I was like, I think that the majority of moviegoers loved it. I think people were really into the Joker and Harley's romance. Did you see all the fan art? Do you see all the couples going that way, going as both for Halloween, and how much everybody loved seeing them together, and both the recreation of the Alex Ross artwork and their big kiss on the helicopter? I think people really like them as a couple. So I think that the idea that this would be reactionary to that, and I think to label Gotham City Sirens as girl power, I think would be bad. And also, I think that Harley, if she wants to struggle with whether or not she should be with the Joker, that's fine. And she's, of course, done that throughout her, in relation to other comic book characters' short career. That would be great. But if she just totally breaks from him, it would just become like some feminism Ghostbusters type movie. And I don't think anybody wants that at all. And I don't understand the point of Harley Quinn without the Joker. He's her entire inspiration. And if she just totally gets rid of the Joker and goes out on her own and is in a movie with Batman, does that really mean that Harley Quinn has turned into the Joker of the DCEU? That's very terrifying, because there should be more respect for the character of the Joker, and also with the really touchy dynamics right now of male and female equality, with women pushing back and then men feeling not appreciated. Look what's happening with Star Wars. I would certainly not want to bring that mess over to the DCEU. Also, if Harley Quinn is going to be so aggressive, is she going to be the one that leads the Gotham City Sirens? Because in the comics, she has not. It's usually Catwoman or Poison Ivy. Both of them are supposed to have stronger personas than her. But with the way they've reimagined Harley Quinn, I think that Poison Ivy and Catwoman are going to need to be significantly reimagined as well to make sure that they still strike the right balance as a team. Now, this was the good thing that Hollywood Reporter suggested. They said, you know what? I bet this is all leading up to Suicide Squad versus Justice League, which could be very well the name of Suicide Squad 2. And then maybe they would combine Justice League 2 and Suicide Squad 2. And my brain just lit up with that's exactly how a studio executive would think. Now, if you think this sounds stupid, well, you may be half right, but the other half is that this is a comic book crossover that's actually starting right now. So you might want to go pick it up, as this could be your future. And this is the storyline, and it seems very much in line with the DCEU. The prequel, or the prelude, just came out today in the recent Suicide Squad issue, and I read it. That Suicide Squad current comic is so poorly written, it's just garbage. Sorry, that was mean, but I think kind of true. But anyway, I'm still going to read the crossover because I think this is very important. But the Justice League decides it's time to take down the Suicide Squad. And as you might recall, that's exactly what Ben Affleck said he would do in the after-credit sequence on Suicide Squad. But when they show up, it turns out it's a trick by Waller to bring the Suicide Squad and the Justice League together to fight another group of supervillains who have escaped, these with powers, and they're led by Maxwell Lord, who seems like just the kind of supervillain that the Warner Brothers would order up. The whole situation does, particularly after the success of Civil War. They're like, why not join our two teams together? I think it's funny, for all the criticism that Warner Brothers gets for doing these DCEU team movies, they're like, but you know what we should do? We should literally double down and make a double team movie. And it's just like, it's so crazy. It could work. I don't know. The covers for the upcoming crossover are kind of cool. Harley Quinn and Wonder Woman together, I could kind of get behind that, to be perfectly honest with you. Also, they're bringing in Killer Frost into the Suicide Squad, and she will participate in this crossover. She was also in the animated movie Assault on Arkham, which did a lot to get the movie made because of that success and popularity. So I bet Killer Frost is going to become a permanent member of the Suicide Squad on the big screen as well. She could maybe even show up in Gotham City Sirens with powers. Thank goodness, because in Suicide Squad, one of my critiques of the film is that they're ridiculously low on powers. I don't know how they could possibly work with the Justice League and fight other superpowered villains when they are the most depowered group of the three. So that's something they really need to work on. Now, as for Catwoman and Poison Ivy, I got a number of you asking me for casting suggestions. And I've already gone over this when we did, when they first announced a Harley Quinn solo movie. And I think my top picks for Catwoman are Rebecca Ferguson. I think she'd be fabulous. And then also for Poison Ivy, I picked Lady Gaga. She was my top pick. But as some of you pointed out, and I agree with this, I think that they're going to have to go and try and bring some diversity to this team. And I think that Poison Ivy would be the candidate. I know a couple of you wanted to see it happen with Catwoman. I don't quite see it happening with her because I think Poison Ivy is such an obvious choice for a couple of reasons. One, I think that they've really upped the sexuality of Harley Quinn, and now I think that she and Poison Ivy, I think, almost fill the same role. Like Harley Quinn used to be cute and Poison Ivy was sexy, but now that's not the case anymore. So I think that two really super sexy white women, you don't need it. So that's one of the reasons that I would diversify the Poison Ivy role. Also, she controls plants, right? And I don't really think that Caucasians are really much associated with plants, right? I think that you can maybe go with Africa. Because of their, it's like the birthplace of life, right? So that would be a good choice. But also South America for its dense jungles. So I think that would make a lot more sense. So I had said before Lupita Nyong'o for Poison Ivy might be an interesting choice, but she's going to be Malice in the upcoming Black Panther movie. So now I suggest Janelle Monáe from Hidden Figures, and of course, a very popular singer. She was so good in that movie. I would like to see Janelle Monáe in any role in Gotham City Sirens. I think the idea of her and Margot Robbie teaming up would be amazing. I'd take her as Poison Ivy. I'd take her as Catwoman. I'd take her as Killer Frost. I think she, and also I have to say, she has an edge to her that would, I think, benefit her in working with David Ayer. And I also think she seems to have a really strong creative, direction within, because she's so successful herself as a creative individual. And I think in some ways she could stand up to David Ayer and be like, I'll do this, I won't do that. And I think she would be excellent. So Janelle Monáe in the Suicide Squad or Gotham City Sirens or both movie, that should happen. All right, so that's my thoughts on Gotham City Sirens, a movie I will definitely see, but the question is, how sad will it make me? Write your thoughts down below. Who would you cast in these roles? Would you do ethnicity change on any of the characters? What do you think of a Justice League Suicide Squad crossover potential that they might be building towards? And also, what do you think of David Ayer, producer versus director on this? What would you do? All right, write your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and you can check out some more episodes right now.